You're listening to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast, home of the 2-hour deep dive interview with gold, platinum, and multi-platinum bands, including Stained, Blue Rodeo, The Arkells, Finger 11, Big Wreck, Moist, Bedouin Soundclash, I Mother Earth, Ill Scarlet, Neverending White Lights, Thornley, and many more. Please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, as well as share, comment, and like. Now let's dive in to today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to the Joel Martin Mastery Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Today is a special episode as we will be honoring the life, career, and legacy of Jon Wysocki, the original drummer for the multi-platinum band Stained, who passed away just a few days ago. Jon spent the last few years focused on his new band, Lydia's Castle, and we are joined today by the band's singer and the band's guitarist. So welcome to the podcast, Tanya Leanne and Cody Denton. So guys, before we start, I just want to acknowledge you guys for having the courage to sit down with me here today to have this talk. I know this is not going to be an easy interview to do. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Joel. We really appreciate you having us on today.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I guess maybe we can start by having you guys add some clarity to maybe the last week of Jon's life. Online, you saw a lot of misinformation about how old he was, about what happened, all those things. So if you guys maybe can add a little bit of clarity to the Stain fans that are tuning in, the Jon fans, the Lydia's Castle fans that maybe aren't in the loop.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So, obviously we had put out a statement, of Jon passing away, and we had provided information that it was due to liver failure. As far as like the different things that causes liver failure, it can be a different variety of different things, such as like hepatitis, an infection, immune disease, alcohol, even cirrhosis and liver cancer. And the best way to kind of put it to the general public is that when, your liver essentially is like a tire, right? And as the more times that you continue to hit a pothole, eventually that tire gets worn down. And of course, like all vehicles, well, most vehicles, there's always a backup tire, and you just continue to hit those potholes. And eventually when there's no more tire left, the engine just kind of falls apart.
So I found out the night that he passed away, and the next morning I made just a short tribute video just to spread the news to all the people that loved him worldwide, just so they knew what was going on and to show how much he meant to me and to everyone. And the clip was shared 75,000 times within just a few days. And it's because there were hundreds and hundreds of comments of love and support and saying how much his music meant to them and how much him as a person meant to them. And it was just shared by hundreds of people. I think that it really showed how much of an impact he had on people around the world. Were you guys getting the same thing on your end when the news got out?
Yeah, absolutely. The outpouring of love from Stained fans and Lydia's Castle fans and just fans of Jon in general, friends. It was very, very overwhelming. He was, especially in Nashville, he was very, very loved. He was a huge staple in our community and in everybody's lives. Everyone has a Jon Wysocki story, So it was it was very, very overwhelming, which is not surprising. I mean, there's a lot of people that loved his playing in Stained. I mean, he was a huge, huge part of that sound. And what's great is that people recognize that. But also just he was a great human being. He was a great friend. So it's not surprising that it was overwhelming, but yes, it was very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And how long was he in Nashville for? Because he's originally from Massachusetts. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, Westfield. I really probably not the person to ask. I think he moved here in 2013. I want to say somewhere around there. It could be a little later, but we're probably not I can't remember the exact detail. But I know that he was here for quite a while. He had played with a variety of bands down here in Nashville, and always trying to get the original rock and roll band started again. And I guess that's when he found us and just moved on from there.
So when we scheduled this interview, there were a couple people I wanted to reach out to just to kind of get their blessing for it, to get their thoughts on, is there anything that they would like me to get across to Jon's friends and family and fans? So I reached out to his fiance, Shannon Fox, and asked her if there's anything she'd like to say or contribute. So she actually provided a poem that's very sweet that I'll read now, and then some kind words as well. So this poem is called 5 Minutes by Rachel Burton. And this is how it goes. If only I could see you for just 5 minutes more, I would tell you all the things I wish I'd said before. I'd hold your hand and hug you and listen much more attentively. Because now I'm lost without you. It was always you and me. I'd laugh more at your funny jokes and take one more walk in the rain. I'd tell you that it's okay. We will meet up again. I'd ask you to watch over me and make sure I'm okay, and ask you if you hear me when I talk about my pain. I would let you know I love you, and that will never end. You are so important to me, my absolute best friend. So that's the poem. And then here's what Shannon had to say about Jon. She said, Jon loved the Blue Angels, dancing, hockey, his Jeep, Adidas and Converse, the color purple, hot tea every morning, pretzels, blueberries, apples, ice cream, and nerd clusters. His favorite meals were my stuffed peppers or my meatloaf. Even when he knew the food was too hot, he always insisted on biting into it. He loved Van Halen, Kiss, and Zac Brown. He listened to a lot of Meshuggah, as he was a huge fan of Thomas Hike. He loved Denzel Washington movies, and one of his favorites was My Cousin Vinny. Our house was always filled with laughter, love, music, and paw prints.
Yeah.
I hope we can keep his memory alive and pay tribute to him whenever possible. As you all know, he loved playing drums, and he was so talented. I don't even think he really knew just how talented he was. He was so humble, and I will love and miss him dearly. So that's from his fiance, Shannon Fox.
Yeah, that's all extremely accurate, and she would know better than anybody else. But yeah, that's very accurate.
And you guys are very close with Shannon?
Yeah, I think we would all consider Shannon, I mean, she is definitely family, best friend. Part of like what Lydia's Castle stands for is, when one of us hurts, all of us hurts. And she not being a physical person of the band, is considered to be a part of the band.
Absolutely.
We've been trying to make an attempt to, reach out to her daily, try to see her daily, because we're all in this together. We're all hurting.
To go back all the way to the start of where Jon would start having an impact on your lives, can we talk about Stain's music? So I guess, do you remember the first time you became aware of the band Stained?
I do.
I don't remember the first time I became aware of Stained, but I remember always hearing Stained everywhere. And I think it was just embedded in my DNA by this point. I think in everyone's DNA, because they were huge. They were like one of the number one rock bands from the late 90s into the early 2000s. They were huge, they were everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time, no. But I always remember hearing them in the car anytime I was with my dad, my stepmom, for sure.
I don't have like a first time that I remember hearing Stained, but I do have a Stained story that I waited a little bit to share with Jon, and because I didn't want him to think anything of it, but I went to him and I said, "Hey, Jon, I just want to let you know that my very first breakup, I cried to It's Been a While on repeat for like days."
I mean, who hasn't? That's the theme song to, the soundtrack to all our breakups. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What was his response to that? I'm sure he was
like, "You're such a baby."
That's a good Jon response, actually.
Yeah, he didn't really, because it was never about him being insane. We just looked at Jon as just being Jon, and it was never about that. But when I shared that story, I made sure I waited a couple years before I told him.
Didn't want to scare him away.
Yeah.
You didn't want him to think you were fangirling, right? You just wanted
Yeah.
to be a friend. Jon's just another guy. And man, I have so many Stain stories. It's crazy. Like, Stain has actually been my favorite band since I was about 16. And I remember at 14 years old hearing the singles from their debut major label album, Dysfunction. And they were right up there with the Korns and the Limp Bizkits as the face of nu metal. So I became aware of them at 14. At 15, I started teaching guitar and bass lessons, and a 14-year-old girl wanted to learn mud shovel on the bass. And I thought that was very cool. And then at 16 is where Stain takes over as the soundtrack to my life. So at 16 is the transition where Outside comes out, and then It's Been a While leading into Break the Cycle. And those two songs, that 1-2 punch of Outside and Break the Cycle, 2 number 1 hits back to back. That really hooked me. And at 16, I got my first job. I was working in the meat department of a grocery store, and I had to bike 30 minutes each way between 2 towns to get to this job. And it didn't matter if it was pouring rain. I'm biking there 30 minutes each way. And I had a blue Panasonic Discman. And because of It's Been a While and Outside, I bought Break the Cycle. And I listened to just that album for that hour every single day. I was angry biking to this job in the rain, and Stained was angry, and we meshed. And so right here, Break the Cycle. I have it on my wall to honor Jon as a guest on the podcast. That was the first album that I truly loved. And because I loved that album so much, music started to take over my life. And I've dedicated my entire life since that album to music, whether it's myself as a musician or working at record labels or recording studios or the podcast where I just interview my favorite bands. Like that album means everything to me. And just to keep it going a little bit further, after Break the Cycle, every single Stained album, I would mark my calendar for the release date. And on the actual release date, I would go to HMV, I'd buy the album, and I would listen to it right there in its entirety in my car. And, so it was an event. Then 4 years ago, I start this podcast, and I made a list of dream guests. If I could get anybody, who would it be? And I had Stained right up there at the top of the list. And then 2 years into the podcast, I interviewed David Bottrell, who's one of the biggest rock and metal producers in the world. He did Tool albums. He's done Godsmack and Mastodon. He's done everyone, Peter Gabriel. Yeah. And he did Chapter 5. He produced and mixed Chapter 5 for Stained. So I'm asking him insider questions about the recording of that album, about the band members, about the music. And when I was promoting that episode, Jon shared one of the clips where we were talking about Chapter 5. And to me, it was like, oh my God, Jon knows I exist. This is the greatest moment ever. And then I realized, like, hey, I'm actually within a few clicks of being in touch with him because of the way that Instagram works. So I ended up finding him on Facebook. He accepts my friend request, which I was shocked. And I messaged him. I said, hey, I'm the biggest fan, and I have this podcast, and you're my dream guest. And he said yes right away. He came on, and even after 4 years of the podcast, hundreds of episodes, it's still in the top 5 most downloaded episodes of all time. And when the podcast reached the 100th episode, I reached out to him and I said, there is no guest that I would rather have back on to celebrate 100 episodes than you. And he came back on, and we spent 2 hours nerding out over his 5 favorite albums of all time. So that is my life story with Stained. So I'm here not just as someone that's interviewing for a random reason. It's like Stained means everything to me. So there's nothing that means more to me than being here and helping to share his story and his legacy and his music and celebrate his life.
Of course, yeah. When Tanya let me know that you were wanting to whether we were going to be doing this with you, I knew it was the right move, because I've actually watched a few of your clips. I know that you are not just doing this just for any random reason. You're doing it for the love of especially drumming, but but the love of rock and roll, and I can appreciate that. And I knew that you would be a good person to be with. So yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
It's a great story, man.
It's a long one. As I'm saying it, I'm like, I hope I'm not boring them, because this is I have so much to say about Stained. And I actually forgot. I during Chapter 5, that album, I got to see them live twice. So I saw them in Quebec City with Breaking Benjamin and Three Doors Down, and then I saw them on the same tour in Montreal where Default was opening for them. So I'm so happy I got to see them live.
That's great. I was never able to see them live, but your story was like, I was just sitting here taking it in because it reminded me of being a kid. Because I would take my, I had a CD player and I would have my headphones in. I would take walks around my neighborhood all the time, and I'm pretty sure I did listen to. I remember having Break the Cycle, the actual CD, because my dad had a huge collection of CDs, and that was one of them that was in there. But I would walk around my neighborhood listening to that and listening to POD. I've listened to that Youth of the Nation record on repeat forever. But uh,
With Alive and Boom
mhm.
and yeah.
Yeah. I hope that's the name of the record. I hope I'm not butchering that. But I would listen to that all the time. And Stained, I actually, it's all coming back to me. But I remember putting that record on quite a few times. But just by you saying that you would just sit there and listen to the whole record, my dad would always tell me, because I used to be one of those kids that would just listen to the hit songs off of records. I would never
That
listen
was
to
so
any of
me.
the other ones. My dad said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Some of these songs that are not on the radio are sometimes the best ones on the record."
Yeah.
And he proved it to me the very first time he played an album front to back for me. So the fact that you did that as well, I can appreciate that, because that was something that I practiced religiously, is listening to full records,
Front to back.
front to back.
You and I were two of the 8 million people that bought that Break the Cycle album. That
That
album, it was so big. Like, no, I remember asking John, what was it like at the peak of the success of that album? Because literally no one alive has experienced selling 8 million copies of one album. And there's 5 hit singles and sold out tours. And typical John just kind of like, yeah, we were very busy during that period. And like, doesn't talk about how completely insane that was.
Well, it just goes to show how humble he
Yeah.
was. That was the first thing that I actually noticed when we first met him, was he didn't talk about Stained
Mm-mm.
at all. I mean, he would maybe bringing something up every once in a while, but it took us kind of asking him to be like, I mean, so kind of how was it like? And we weren't fangirling over him or anything, but
We'd have like dinners and hang out at each other's houses. And
but
you
he
know,
he would never brag about
no.
anything.
He never had his stuff like hanging up on his walls.
No, not
A
at
lot
all.
of the time, like they just sat kind of like back to back, like, and in a pile. I mean, he had them, he respected them, but he didn't really, like Cody said, like he was very humble with who he was, and what he did. I mean, he'd tell you about it if you had asked, but he wasn't, oh, look at me, I did this.
Yeah, he didn't spend the entire conversation talking about him. It was very much, he was more interested in you, who
Yeah.
you were. Um, but it just goes to show he was a great humble guy for sure.
And how did you guys actually meet John? Like, what's the origin story for Lydia's Castle?
You want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take it. We started writing songs together. We were living together. And then COVID happened and we needed to do something with ourselves. And we've been musicians for years. We used to be in bands, separate bands back in St. Louis. It's about probably over a decade ago. So we've been doing this for a while, but we started to write songs together and we decided that we might have something and we wanted to maybe try to get a band together. And then we came in contact with a mutual friend of ours and John's, Derek, and he was jamming with John at the time, and he saw an ad that we put out, and he didn't, he had mentioned that John was from Stained in that first message, but it was one of the first messages we got back. So we said, okay, well, why not? Let's try. And we met each other, and it was funny. We were at, this is one of my favorite memories. My first favorite memory of John is that we met at Derek's house the very first night, and John was of course fashionably late. He was probably about 15-30 minutes late. And it was 9 o'clock at night and he's wearing sunglasses. I'm not sure.
A wizard arrives precisely when a wizard means to arrive.
That's how I
Yeah.
saw it as. And it was funny. He was very, at first I thought he had the tattoos and everything. You could see the stain tattoo on his wrist, and it kind of, for me, it was like I knew who Stain was, but I knew at the end of the day the vibe had to be right and we had to get
Yeah.
along for this to work. So it was very much like maybe we were sizing each other up for just a second, but he I think he had maybe heard one demo and that's why he decided to meet us, and we showed him songs like Search for You and Phoenix that we were working on. And that was when it was like, all right, yeah, this might be something. And we got along within 5 or 10 minutes of meeting him. And um, you saw his personality come out right away for sure. But that's how we met him, and we started jamming together, and he just kept coming back. And we
We don't know why he just kept showing up.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the funny thing. Actually, that's the running joke, is that we never officially like had asked John to be in the band. There was a time where like I asked Cody, I said, should we, he keeps coming back, should we ask him if he wants to be in the band? And Cody was like,
I'm
no,
not going to tell him not to
I'm
come
not going to
back.
tell the drummer of Stain he can't come back. And so, you fast forward a year later, and John showed up to rehearsal with the Lydia's Castle tattoo on his chest. And I looked at Cody and I said,
I guess he's not leaving.
I don't think he's leaving.
So
But aside of like what Cody said, I think another important thing to mention is, not just did John like the music of Lydia's Castle and the chemistry, but he really liked the message behind Lydia's Castle. When Cody and I had moved to Nashville to, start our lives over, we had just lost our daughter 9 months into our pregnancy. So about a couple weeks before our due date, and her name was Lydia. And so we moved to Nashville to find who we wanted to be as people again, thinking for 9 months we'd be a mom or a dad. And so when we moved to Nashville and COVID hit and we started writing, we really wanted to create something to show people that through tragedy and through really dark times, you can find a light at the end of a tunnel, and you can take these really bad, experiences and moments and create something really beautiful with them, and give people hope. And I think that, what John liked as well was not that we were just writing good music and we all had this great chemistry together, but that we were building something, bigger than us, something to give people hope and a light in life. And so I think, that's one of the things that kind of kept John going, was we're doing something bigger, and that's another reason why he kept coming back.
yeah.
That's a great and powerful message. And if someone getting a tattoo of the band logo on them doesn't qualify you to become an official member of the band, I don't know what does.
He didn't even tell us he was doing it either. He
Showed
just,
up.
yeah.
I
we're
didn't
like,
even know he
"What?"
had that. So
We would have went with you. Yeah. If you actually, I think in one of your videos, I noticed if you look at this very center, he has like a V cut where he's sitting in that chair. You can see it if you look closely. It's
that,
kind of dark on the video, but it's there.
that red chair looked like a throne when he was sitting in it. I remember thinking like the king sits upon his throne.
That was my first
Of course,
thought.
I can't say that because I'm trying not to fangirl the whole 4 hours in the 2 interviews. So
Yeah, that would have been a little awkward for sure.
yeah, the king has
But
arrived.
that wouldn't have been the first time that he heard that. But that was my first thought about John when I saw him for the first time sitting behind the drum kit, because it probably helped that he was on a little bit of a riser too the first time we jammed. But just looking at him, it looked like a king on a throne. Yeah. I remember that as well. It's very accurate for him.
You guys have mentioned before that John believed in you before maybe you guys even believed in yourself. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Here's the thing, is that John has been doing this for a very long time. And for us, we're a little far in the weeds when it comes to our songwriting. We write all these songs and we like them, but I mean, are they really any that good? I mean, just because you like something doesn't mean everyone else is going to like it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just how we are. I mean, sometimes it takes an outside perspective to tell us that, like, hey, this might be something. And John, he knows a good song. He's very much a song-oriented drummer. He's not one to
Songwriter.
He's a songwriter. That's actually something that people don't give him enough credit for, is that
Yeah.
he actually he's very in tune with how a song is supposed to be and know what parts are supposed to go where. We need to go into something here. He was very vocal about that process. But yeah, he heard "Search for You," which is probably, I think, the song that he had the most faith in, at least in the beginning. And um,
Yeah, and you got to
yeah,
remember too, like he found us at a time where we were broken.
yeah,
You know, we didn't know what our future looked like. We didn't know who we wanted to be. Well, we had an idea of who we wanted to be, but we were rebuilding our entire lives. And then John waltz in and, gives us the confidence of, wow, this is good and I want to be a part of it.
hmm
And, at the time we were kind of in our late 20s, middle to late 20s. And to have somebody of that caliber believe in what you're doing, it really gives you that fire and that hope to keep going,
hmm
and so I think he saw something in us before we saw something in us, to say, and John was a big part of, like, pushing us to be where we are today. I mean,
I think he knew what he was looking for, and
yeah,
I think we wanted the same thing, and I
yeah,
think that's probably why he believed in us for sure.
yeah.
You mentioned Jon as a songwriter, and I've said it so many times on this podcast, but Jon's one of the few drummers that has the ability to create hooks with his drums. Like if you go back through the Stain discography, there's
Yep.
so many Stain songs where the drums are actually a massive hook, and you don't hear that a lot. Usually drums are kind of just keeping everything else hooked into place, really.
Yeah.
And Jon, like in right here, there's hooks in It's Been a While. He has this cymbal and hi-hat stuff that are hooks.
Yeah.
So you saying him as a songwriter, it's like his drums are a part of the chemistry of every song. That's how I look at it.
That's very
Yeah.
much true. Yeah, his style is what kind of kept us grounded, I would say, as far as songwriting goes. And I was gonna mention the same thing that you mentioned about his cymbal work. I think that's one of the more impressive things about him as far as his drumming style goes. That and his just general feel and his drum beats, and just the fact that he doesn't, he flares his own style, but he
Mhm.
doesn't showboat. He doesn't
No.
he's not doing these
It's
crazy
very
fills.
tasteful,
Yeah.
very tasteful.
hmm
And what did he bring to the band musically, and maybe what did he bring outside of music to the band?
I think musically, I mean, what I see musically is, you know, it takes years and years of people to develop like a music chemistry together. It came very natural for me, John and Cody, to get into a room and to just pump out songs, you know. And I think musically, like, it's different when it's just a singer and a guitarist writing together versus like adding more of a rhythm section. John musically became the heartbeat of the band, you know, and
Gave us a lot of direction on how we've written since before meeting him and then after meeting him. He
mhm,
gave me a lot of perspective on like how if I'm writing something by myself, how he would approach the song, and it influenced the way that I would write.
mhm,
Um, and if you just listen to any of the Stain records, you can kind of get a feel for how he plays. And for me, I was always a big classic rock head. I love, and he is as well. And that was one
yeah,
thing non-musically he brought to the table, was that we actually loved
the same
the
music.
same music.
Yeah.
Even new stuff that was coming out.
Mhm.
We did love all of the same bands,
Very equally aligned.
very equally aligned, and it was all, he loved everything, like Shannon said, from Meshuggah to Van Halen, especially Van Halen.
Yeah.
We'd have so many conversations. He really like shone a light to me, at least, on Alex, and how much his sound is important to Van Halen just as much as Eddie's.
Mhm.
Um, so he gave me a lot of perspective on things like that, like, each part in the band can deliver something that maybe can't be replaced. Um, so yeah, he's yeah, we all got along
I
musically and
think,
not
and
musically.
I think outside the band, like the cool thing about John was that, we were not just a band that got together to play music. We would tell each other like, this is all the friends we need. like you guys are my family and friends. And
Yeah.
we hung out like that.
Yeah.
Not just on the road, but if John wanted to go bowling, we'd all go bowling. If John wanted to get together and do like a dinner night at his place or go see a show, I think the last show we all went to go see was either Seven Dust or Mammoth, but we made sure that not just building like the chemistry in the room to write music, but building like the chemistry outside. And I think he really kind of like put, the nail on the head with making it a family unit,
Yeah, he was very much I don't think he had ever really had a situation where he really hung out with the members of his band outside of the band. And he really valued that. And it was great because he loved talking on the phone. You could just sit and talk on the phone with him and
hours
about whatever. You're just having, you're just hanging out. I mean, if he's bored and you're bored, he'll call you. And he brought a lot of family value to our band for sure. And he uh the value in communication and communicating and staying in communication with each other, talking to each other on the phone rather than a text message.
And not just the good times too. I just want to bring that up. Like it was bad times too, like when we were going through stuff, if we were ever going through like a little rut, he'd come and he would sit with us for hours to talk about what we're going through and vice versa. Like it really was like thick or thin family, not just like let's go have fun. It was real life stuff too. And I think that's the hardest part for me with John being gone is I'm going to miss playing with him. The music was fun, but I've never gone more than 2 weeks of not talking to him.
Yeah.
And we're now coming up on the third week of him being gone, and to not be able to call your best friend is very hard.
And with John having been quite a few years older than you guys, with him having already had so much experience and success in the music industry, can you think of any lessons that he might have taught you guys?
Oh, so many. First of all, to clarify his age, he's 56. He was born in 1968. I forgot to mention that at the beginning.
So the confusion is if you search Jon Wysocki, there's basically like the Wikipedia page or the equivalent. The first thing that comes up had his birthday as being
71.
71 instead of 69 is what you said, or 68? 68. So basically everyone right away does a search to see his birthday and his age. So everyone was saying he passed away at 53 when in fact he was 56. So that's where the confusion started for everyone trying to fact check right off the bat.
Gotcha. I didn't know if they were just copying and pasting the article and trying to be the first to put it out or whatever.
We laughed about it. And we were like, if John was here, he would laugh about it.
He would appreciate the extra couple.
He would have liked the 3 years. Yeah.
But I mean, that makes sense. I didn't know any of that. I thought it was bizarre at first. Like, why is everyone getting his age wrong? But that makes sense. Lessons on how to be on the road for sure. He brought a lot of experience in that. He had been on the road for 17 years with Stained. So he knew how to do it and he knew like what to avoid. So there's a lot of life lessons on that.
Music business.
What to expect and what not to expect. There was a lot of value in the knowledge that he brought to the table, which I've said it once before. If we didn't have John, I'm sure we would still be still trying to figure out what we're doing, to this point, or maybe just now starting to figure it out. But he definitely helped us excel in a few different ways, just based on knowledge alone and what to look for, like what to expect and what to look out for.
And then there was good morals and qualities too, like checking your ego at the door.
Yeah.
When you started working with somebody.
Listen, if the drummer of Stain doesn't have an ego, then neither should you.
Neither should we.
and that was for me. I was like, okay. And when we started writing with him, it was very, very open and honest. It was just like, listen, the idea that I have might suck. And John really didn't like most of his ideas. It would take me saying like, no, that's awesome. Do that.
Yeah.
And
then also
that was a lot.
Like criticism on writing, a lot of people are like, they think that what they write is, set in stone and golden, but really like we would give each other criticism. Even John, he wanted the criticism of like, what can I do better? And it was like really inspiring to see somebody of his caliber, like wanting people our age who've not done anything like that to give him criticism and feedback. And we do the same, like we all together, and he taught us like how to take that criticism and how to, let's just try the part. He'd be like, okay, let's just try it and see how it sounds. And we do it and we'd like it or not like it, or we would, and it would be great. And he taught us how to do that, in a very constructive, like positive way.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Jon sharing his musical ideas. When you think about all the Lydia's Castle songs, is there any song that stands out to you as being your favorite because of Jon's drums?
Oh,
That's a good question.
I have one.
What do you think, Tanya?
So, I would say that probably Falling Into Place. We wrote that song in our apartment. Jon was on an electric kit.
Yeah.
We just ran it through ears on it was analog
On an analog mixer.
on an analog mixer.
Yeah.
And that song probably came together in what,
15 minutes.
15, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it really never changed. That was really purely Jon, And in that song, it wasn't really a whole lot of, hey, I want you to do this or that. That was really just him and his art, And so I really cherish that song, Falling Into Place, the most, because I really think it shines a light of like a lot of different techniques and capabilities, but it was really just like Jon flawlessly.
Yeah. There's a lot of great moments that he had on those songs. But for whatever reason, off the top of my head, I want to say What Comes Around as far as his drumming.
He loved that song.
Yeah. There'd be times where we were like, maybe, we've written some other songs. Maybe we should maybe take that song out of the set list and we'll do this one. He's like, no.
Having it.
It's like, no, that song has to be on there. He just loved it.
He loved it.
But if you listen to that, just the way that he constructed that drum groove, the boom, gat, the boom, the gat, the boom, gat, the boom, boom, gat. And like he just loved that type of groove was like purely Jon. They're like going back to kind of what Tanya said, we would give him ideas. Some of those ideas for like Falling Into Place, I told him, think Slave to the Grind, and then that's kind of like how he would go about it. But this one was purely just him. This is one of the first songs that we wrote just with, between the three of us, brand new idea right in the room. And that to me was purely Jon. Just the way that he thought about how to play and how his parts should go. That's very much Jon to me. As far as our songs go, that's the most Jon Wysocki groove to me.
So when I had Jon on the podcast last year for episode 100, I believe he had talked about you guys working on new music, writing new songs, maybe recording. Do you guys have any idea what you're going to do with that music? I don't know if stuff was done, like just already recorded that could be released. I guess as the Lydia's Castle fans, is there a chance that this music comes to light?
Yeah, so we're working on writing an album, or we're working on an album right now, and half of it is already written and recorded with Jon on it. We do want to finish the other half because we have a lot of like demo ideas that had Jon on them and that were really good songs as well. But as far as like a release date, we do plan to release it. That is definitely something we want to provide to not just Lydia's Castle fans, but Stain fans and Jon Wysocki fans in general, because it's the last recordings of what we have of Jon. But as far as that date, we don't have that yet.
Yeah, we're not there yet, but I mean, we will definitely, the plan is to definitely release, the rest of what Jon was on for sure. And, maybe there's little nuggets that we have from rehearsals that may come out later if we deem it good, quality enough. But, yeah, it'll come, but we'll make sure that we announce that when the time is right. Right now, we're just kind of taking it one day, 1 week at a time,
Yeah.
So Cody, you had mentioned a favorite Jon memory. I'm wondering, Tanya, can you think of any favorite Jon memories?
Oh man. I know that I have so many. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but I love Starbucks and Jon hated it. He just hated Starbucks. I loved
He
it.
didn't like that it was like $6 for a coffee, or what was it about
I don't
Starbucks?
know. He was just like all like anti Starbucks,
He
and
was a Duncan fan for sure.
he
So
was
he liked coffee, just not Starbucks. Is that it?
Yeah, just something
yeah.
about Starbucks. He would make jokes about us being millennials all the time. So he's like, it's such a millennial thing, you freaking
I
millennials.
would wait for him to be asleep in the van. So if I was driving, then I'd stop at
You
Starbucks.
just hope that he doesn't wake up while you're in the drive-through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really have like a specific memory. I just I hit a very, very low point in my life. And I will say that, you know, John made an attempt to call me a lot. He checked up on me. He made sure I was okay when he didn't have to. And part of the reason of me getting through, you know, my problems and being here today is because I had people like John in my life that cared, and that's far beyond a band and people I think get placed in your life for reasons and purposes. And I see so many different ways that John coming into our lives, like there was a reason for it. And so I have many, many, many memories, many laughs and funny times. But I will say, like, the one thing I'm the most grateful for is just John in general, because he's part of the reason why I'm able to even be here today.
And you guys knew John more than most people. What are the things outside of music that brought him joy?
Hockey,
Hockey.
Bruins. He was a giant Bruins fan. If we were doing an interview and there's a Bruins game that was on and he was missing it, he would
It's on in the background.
yeah, he's like, can you guys just do it? There's a game going on. But
Yeah.
he was a giant hockey fan. He loved animals, but especially dogs.
Yes.
Uh,
Children.
he was very, very good with kids. He was um what brought him joy?
Yeah.
A lot of different things. I mean, music was very much him. The majority of what made him happy had something to do with music for
Yeah.
sure. He's a true rock and roll fan and expert through and through. Um, but he loved going to the pool. He loved like getting out. He loved going to Gatlinburg and getting a cabin.
Florida,
He
the
he he
beach.
liked vacation. He was very much like he liked to be out. He liked to
Yeah.
go. He liked to be doing things, whatever that means. Seeing friends, going and seeing a band, whatever. Um, but yeah, anything to do with outside, he was in. If it's sunshine and water, he's in for sure.
And what were people like around him when you were out in public and people might have recognized him as being the drummer from Stained?
Yeah.
Sure.
How did people react?
So, there had been people that had came up and, hey, I recognize you. I know you're the drummer from Stained. Can I like shake your hand, take your picture? And, we would be in the middle of setting up on stage or loading out or in the middle of anything,
A
a
conversation.
conversation. And if somebody came up, he always stopped what he was doing and made time for that person,
Yep.
but he never complained about it. He never said anything derogatory, like he didn't wish that would have happened. But then he also never like chalked it up and, fangirled about it himself. It wasn't like, oh, I can't believe somebody just wanted to come take their picture with me because I'm this, that. And it was never like that. It
Yeah.
was, he respected that person because of what he had done in his life. He gave them that time and then he just moved on
Just
with
moved
what he
on with
was
his day.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like I said, I mean, it might be cliche to call him like just to say that he's humble, but that's
He's
the best
truly
word. He
humble.
was humble about everything that he had accomplished.
Yep.
But yeah, as far as fans goes, I mean, he would always make the time for
Yep.
every single one of them.
Can you think of any crazy or funny or sweet or memorable interactions? Do any pop up over the years with him?
I got one. So we were on the road with Taproot. We did this, I don't remember where the show was, but this lady came up to us and she said, will you sign my body to all of us? And then we ended up like signing her back with a Sharpie. And then come to find out, her and her boyfriend or husband had a bunch of signatures all over them and they later get them tattooed. So I thought that would, do you remember that?
Yeah.
When we,
Yeah, I remember that.
so I mean, that was kind of like a situation that we had. But again, John wasn't like, didn't think anything of it. We were just kind of like looking at her like,
Are you sure you want to do this?
you want our signature on your body forever? Okay.
Sure.
Can you think of one? Like,
So your question was like just any funny memories in general, or like fan interactions with them, like funny fan interactions?
Fan interactions. Like if there's anything sweet, like sometimes people, make something by hand for someone, or maybe
oh, the
it was
girlfriends.
crazy, like someone was rushed through a line to get to you guys, like just anything you can think of that really stands out amongst fan interactions over the years.
I mean, I'm sure that there were those types of fan interactions. I don't really quite remember if they happened in front of us. Every once in a while, he would say that like people at like a hockey game or something would recognize who he was for sure. But I would say that there were a couple kids I remember on the
Mhm.
road that actually recognized who he was, and I think they were all of maybe 15 or 16. But the ripe age of getting into drums or getting into playing music in general.
Yeah.
And the look on their faces, like when he would give them one of his sticks with his signature
Oh,
on it,
yeah.
like that would, and how that meant to them. That's probably, I don't remember where this was, but I do remember that happening, and I remember that they were very like awestruck of him, and he was, to us he's John, but to everyone else he's, you know, the drummer is Stained.
Yeah.
But that was probably one of the sweeter moments I remember seeing.
And when you guys look back on your life and career with John and Lydia's Castle, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
I'm most proud of the body of work that we've produced with John,
Yeah.
for sure. I'm very proud of it. What I'm most grateful for is his friendship. I'm grateful to have just known him as a person.
Yeah.
Um, he is one of the kindest human beings that I've ever met, and he'll be missed. So I'm just most grateful for him and being a part of his life, and
Yeah.
for him being a
Same.
part of ours.
What do you think's John's legacy?
What's John's legacy? Um, a fierce and powerful drummer with a gentle touch to his loved ones around him, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Um, you would think that somebody that drummed like him would just be this big, I don't know. I don't know what you would think, but the way that he acted on stage and then the way that he acted off stage were
Very different.
two totally different animals, and he was rock star on stage and one of the most humble dudes off stage. And I hope that that's his legacy to me. I don't think his legacy is just Stained or just Lydia's Castle. I think John's legacy is that he was a great drummer and an even better friend.
Yeah.
So another person that I reached out to was John's sister, Kara,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and she sent in some kind words, so I'll read them here. She says, "My brother was fierce about the people he loved, his family and his friends. I'd like to share a letter that someone wrote to my parents that's so beautiful and speaks to the essence of my brother's character. I wish I could have read it at his funeral, but I received it just after. The woman's name was Marilyn Burke. My mom's name is also Maryland. My mom didn't make it to my brother's service as she has dementia and is not doing well. My brother and my mom were always very close. It's hard for me to see mom not properly mourn my brother, but I guess it's God's protection plan. Thank you for giving my brother the time and respect. I really appreciate it, and I know he'd be honored." And she actually sent me the letter, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read through this. So the letter was written on June 5th, 2024, and it says, "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Wysocki, I'm writing to you and your family to express my sadness at the death of your son, John. He lived around the corner from us in Hampton for a few years. I know that you're hearing from many people you don't know, and I'm not sure how this can be of much comfort at a time like this, but I hope it helps at least a little. I was a teacher at East Longmeadow High School for 32 years, and one of my courses was psychology. Among other things, my students were assigned to write their autobiographies. I had one young man from a difficult family situation who wrote that the only time he felt happy and at peace was when he listened to Stained. I thought maybe I could help a bit by reaching out to Jon. Frankly, I didn't expect to hear back from the note I put in his mailbox, telling him about this kid and asking for his autograph on a slip of paper. I realized that one doesn't move to a place like Hampton to attract attention, and I actually thought that I had a lot of nerve. So I was astonished when I opened my mailbox and found a package from Jon 2 days later. Inside was hardly the piece of paper I was hoping for. There was a Stained t-shirt, a hat, a personal note, press releases, and autographs from every single band member. There was also a nice note to me from Jon that one of the reasons he was glad to make the gesture was that his mom and I shared the same first name. I took these wonderful gifts to school the next day and called my student into a back room of the school library. When he saw what Jon had done, he burst into tears. He later told me it was the happiest moment of his life.
Wow.
Mr. and Mrs. Wysocki, I have no idea what you're going through right now, although I have a son Jon's age. But I can imagine that however short his time was on this earth, it must have given Jon a great deal of satisfaction to be so successful doing the one thing he had always wanted to do here. What's even more impressive is that he didn't keep that satisfaction all to himself. He shared his good fortune with people he didn't even know, but who needed it the most. And I'm sure that a lot of that good-heartedness originated with you. Please accept my sorrow and also my gratitude. Sincerely, Marilyn Burke.
There you go. You
A testament to Jon's character.
It doesn't surprise me. That's a beautiful, beautiful letter. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. And you're not just hearing it from our mouths, you're hearing it from somebody who knew Jon years ago, and which means that he's always been like that,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very touched when she sent that letter. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to talk about the fundraiser that you guys are organizing. So this is coming up on Tuesday, June 18th at the Vinyl Lounge in Nashville. What can you share with our listeners about the event and what they can expect if they purchase a ticket to attend?
Sure. This is a memorial for Jon, first and foremost. Yes, we are raising funds for charity for animal shelters that Jon had supported around Nashville, but this is a full-blown memorial show dedicated to Jon. What they can expect is we're going through the different periods in Jon's musical career, ones that he was most proud of, or at least he said to us, which is like Stained. He was in Soil for a little bit. There was a band called Save the World that he was a part of. Yes, on the flyer here, and then of course Lydia's Castle. So all proceeds will go to Nashville Animal Shelters. It's going to be at the Vinyl Lounge, and we have a lot of great things planned for this show. But mainly what it is that this show will be uh, going through sets of Soil and then sets of Stained songs as well that will be performed by people that were in Jon's life. Musicians all throughout Nashville will be coming together. We basically put the bands together for them, and then they rehearse their parts on their own time, and then they have one sound check to rehearse the song, and then we play the show. And normally you would think that sounds like it would be a train wreck, but there's plenty of these types of charity shows around Nashville, and all of these people are very professional, great players, and it's going to be such a great time. And a lot, if not all of them, knew Jon and have some sort of Jon story at some point in their careers as well. So that's what makes this really special, is that it's all of Jon's friends playing Jon's songs in honor of him.
And we have friends like we'll have people from Saliva, All That Remains, Cavo, some of the guys from Soil playing in it as well.
Saving Abel. There's
Saving
an
Abel.
amazing lineup. I saw the
Yeah.
lineup. It's incredible.
It's and there's just so many more people who are also just wanted to come, so this is going to be just a very this is the way to send Jon off, one big rock show, and it's just going to be full of love. It's going to be very beautiful. We'll have speakers Kara, Shannon will be there to speak. So I will say, if anyone is listening or planning to come, it is a limited capacity. It's not a big venue. It's a 450 cap. So do buy your ticket ahead of time. Again, the tickets are just for the head count. It goes towards animal shelters for charity. But it's going to be very, very beautiful. And we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it will be treated as a rock show, but also definitely as a memorial for Jon as well. It's not going to be just a thrown together thing. We're doing this right for him. We're doing it the way that he would like for it to be, I would believe.
And with the proceeds being donated to Nashville animal shelters, is this because of Jon's love for dogs?
Absolutely,
it is
100%. Yeah.
He has two that he really likes, and I don't know the names off the top of my head, but one of them are for senior dogs that if they don't get adopted, eventually end up getting put down. And then another one where it's just a regular dog animal shelter, but he really loved pets in general, dogs, and so that was the proceeds that his family chose.
Is there anything that you'd like to say to all of Jon's friends and family and fans that, have supported him over his lengthy career in the music industry, all those people that share this outpouring of love and support and sharing their favorite memories? Is there anything you'd like to say to them here as we wrap up?
First and foremost, to Jon's family and Jon's friends, close friends, we in Lydia's Castle share our deepest condolences for you all, especially all of you that have known Jon your entire lives or his entire life. And we're very close with him. We do want to share condolences. And what do you think? What do you have to say?
I mean, I would say honestly, Jon dedicated his entire life to music, and a lot of that is dedicating himself to all of us because his music made a difference in people's lives, obviously, as we've seen. I know some of us listen to his music maybe during breakups or divorces or even good times as well. Or, maybe even, for you, the angry music when you were angry in the rain and it got you through. And, so his music with the millions of copies that it sold, the millions of people that it touched and him dedicating his life to music, it was because he truly just loved all of you guys, And so the one thing I would leave you guys with is he did what he loved and he loved what he did. And he did that for not just himself because of what he loved, but because he loved all of us. He lived a really great life. So,
and I would say, just a thank you to everybody that has shown love and support for Jon and his family and his friends. And we've received quite a few messages as well, words of encouragement, and we definitely appreciate all of that.
Yeah.
That does not go unnoticed. It's been a crazy few weeks, but we just want to let everybody know that does not go unnoticed. We've read every single message, and we really, really appreciate that.
As we wrap up, I want to thank you guys for being open and honest and transparent. It's been an honor to spend the last hour or so just pouring on the love for Jon and honoring him and him as a person and his music and his career. He meant so much to me, so much to you, so much to everyone listening. So Tanya and Cody, thank you so much for your time. And man, it's still hard. Every time you think about it, it's hard that someone that incredible is gone, but here we are.
It's hard to believe, and I think we're still trying to grasp that reality for sure. But yeah, Jon Wysocki forever. That's all I have to say.
The GOAT.
The GOAT.
The GOAT. So to the podcast listeners, to the Jon fans, the Stain fans, the Lydia Castles fans, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
If you've enjoyed today's episode of the podcast, please take a moment to subscribe, like, comment, and share. What I want to know is who would you like me to sit down with next for a 2-hour deep dive interview? You can let me know by reaching out to me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Joel Martin Mastery. Joel is Joel. And you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat at Joel Mastery. So I am done. I am complete. I approve this message, and I'll see you on the next episode.